I want to talk today about motivation, determination on this path of practice that we find ourselves on. A lot of people here are participating in the 40-day meditation challenge, which is wonderful. A lot of people here are not. I think regardless, we all have this desire to practice well, to be more mindful, to take those moments of pause, to meditate in whatever way that works for us. And admittedly, it's not always easy. My next door neighbor, he got the email from me because I know he's a meditator, and he didn't sign up, but I have the feeling that he's with us anyway. I saw him 2 days ago and he said, "Hey Kylie, how's that 40-day thing going?" I said, "It's going great." And he shook his head and he said, "Oh, it's so hard." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing." So I don't doubt that Dennis has a great meditation practice, but it really made me think, where do we get our motivation to do this? Where do we get the determination to sit quietly, or to pause as we're doing things and to come back to the present moment? So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. And I looked up motivation in the dictionary, and one definition is, which I like a lot, the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. The reason one has for acting in a particular way. That's our motivation. So different areas, different examples would be, pain is a great motivator. I've noticed as I get older, the pain in the body motivates me to do yoga or to do the PT exercises that were prescribed, but tend to get lower on the priority list. So that pain is a motivator sometimes. Or pain can be a motivator to finally go see the doctor about whatever it is. Positive memories can be motivators. For example, you remember the time you called your friend and he or she made you feel better about something you were upset about. Now you're upset again, so you're motivated by that positive memory to pick up the phone and call again. It's very helpful. Negative memories, probably more powerful motivators than we wish them to be. But they can be helpful too. For example, maybe you got sick when you ate a certain something and you remember that unpleasant experience, and it motivates you to not have it again, even though maybe it's really delicious, something like that. So there's all kinds of things that motivate us to act or behave in a particular way. And for this practice, the motivation is, we have the research is out that it's really good for our health, our mental health, and our physical health. Meditation is very good for mental health, very good for physical health. It also gives you wisdom. Meditation gives you great insight over time, gradually. It brings equanimity. You've been practicing, you feel it. You don't know, it's hard to describe with words right? But you can feel it around the edges of what you're doing. But it's not always easy, right? It's not always easy to sit, to do your formal meditation. The 40-day challenge is great for that because it really, instead of just saying, oh, I won't today, you're like, oh, we're doing the 40-day thing, so let me at least just for 10 minutes. And you do it, and it's helpful. Because it's easy to just say, oh, I don't have time. Like my neighbor, he said, it's the hardest thing to stop, to pause. Why it's so hard is, not only are we personally, like on your habit energy, your personal energy is oftentimes you want to just do, like we're kind of hardwired to just get things done. It's what makes life possible for us. We need to, I don't know what you do, go to the grocery store and cook the dinner like we do so that we can be. So there's that habit energy. But the social environment, the structural environment is difficult, right? Especially now. We have a culture of, continuous doing and continuous distraction. So they promised us that when we had these washing machines, that we didn't have to wash our clothes by hand anymore. They promised it would be utopia because now we'd have all this free time and we could sit around and relax and have lunch with our friends. But, we just fill it in with something else. And now we're in this period where we're noticing that a lot of that activity that we have going on is actually mental activity, and we're connecting with apps and very distracting things on the devices. But I'm not going to go there. I'll just say that, yes, it's uncomfortable to stop and sit in meditation. It's normal. You're swimming against the current, but the payoff is big. That's why I was saying it's like we're rebellious. We're very rebellious by stopping and not doing anything. It's a very rebellious act. So how do you when you're being rebellious, you need some kind of energy to keep you going because you're swimming against the stream. So where do we get our motivation? So I want to share this story of Buddha, which kind of made me laugh. It's a great little story. Remembering that Buddha was a truly enlightened being. People looked up to him for 50 years. He was just a tremendous teacher, and he brought huge relief and liberation to endless, thousands and thousands of people, or tens of thousands. I don't know how they count them. And his teachings continue now to bring tremendous relief. So he was a man who had reached enlightenment. So when you hear this story, you'll know why. It's a passage from the Mahagasinga Sutta. So anyway, the story is about several eminent monastics who were engaging in a playful competition with one another. And the competition was each guy kind of eulogized a particular quality of some very accomplished practitioner that could match the beauty of a moonlit grove. I guess they were at this meeting and the grove was beautiful and the moonlight was a particularly beautiful one. And so they were eulogizing the great qualities in each other, how they were such great practitioners. And the Buddha was there with them. And so when the monastics approached him to receive his verdict regarding which one of them had spoken well, he endorsed all of their statements by replying that they had all spoken well. And then he added yet another quality, which was one that the Buddha considered to be characteristic of himself, although he didn't say it directly. And it's as follows. This characteristic is as follows. He says, suppose when the night is over, at dawn, in compliance with dwelling independence on a town or village, because these monastics didn't have means to support themselves, they depended on the villagers. A monastic puts on the robes and takes his bowl, his alms bowl, to enter the village to beg for food, with the body well guarded, the faculties well collected, mindfulness well established. Then, having begged for food after midday, having put away robes and bowl, as well as having washed hands and feet. This is great. You're kind of getting the idea of how these guys lived. With a sitting mat placed over the shoulder, the monastic approaches the forest, goes to the foot of a tree or an empty, quiet place. Spreading out the sitting mat, he sits down cross-legged with the determination, I will not release the cross-legged sitting until the influxes are eradicated. I will not release the cross-legged sitting until the influxes are eradicated. He in turn does not release the cross-legged sitting until the influxes are eradicated. So you might be wondering, what does that mean the influxes are eradicated? That means until he's reached enlightenment, until he's like, all of these things that bother us, he's let go of everything, and he's sitting cross-legged until that happens. It's wonderful. And he did it. He didn't do it in one sitting, although that's how this particular sutta describes it. But he's saying, I had the determination that I wouldn't give up until I got there. It's that important to be mentally free. It's so important that I will go and sit, and it will be uncomfortable sometimes, maybe a lot of the times. But I will do it with determination, knowing that the reward is so great. So great. So later in this chapter, so this is it's a book on the life of the Buddha, and it's written by a very scholarly and wise monk. At the end of each chapter, he offers the things that I love, which is like, well, what can I do about it? Like, give me the practical stuff, right? And he offers up three things for us, three ways to get added motivation for our own meditation practice. And the first of the three ways to help get motivation is, so we've spoken before in this class, and if you weren't here for it, I'll briefly describe it. We've spoken of Vedana. Vedana is like the feeling tone of our life, right? The feeling tones, like we started this class with, how do you feel today? Feeling tones are very important in Buddhist practice. Now, feeling tones it's less about the emotions, and it's more about just how does my body feel? And so the first suggestion for increasing our motivation and determination. So he says, it's possible so it's kind of two things. It's possible to employ the situation of being seated in meditation as a way of exploring how painful feelings affect the mind. This one's very interesting because, yes, indeed, oftentimes when I'm sitting in meditation, I do feel pain in, different places, and you kind of have to move, or, even if you're laying down, like your back starts to hurt, and so maybe you want to stuff a pillow under your spine or whatever it is. So you do feel pains while you're meditating. So he suggests that remaining aware for a moment of any itch or discomfort rather than immediately relieving it. So only after having clearly noticed the painful situation and noticed the push of the mind to take action, then you scratch yourself or then you change your posture. So he's suggesting like being aware of it for just a moment before taking action. And he says training in this way over time can make us become more aware of the pervasiveness of subtle, painful feelings throughout a whole range of physical activities. He gives the example, putting on or taking off clothes to avoid the unpleasant feeling of being too cold or too hot. Eating or drinking to avoid the feelings of hunger and thirst. Going to the bathroom to avoid feeling that unpleasantness. So there's no end to the activities to be done continually in order to counter our body's inherent tendency to give us painful feelings. So his suggestion is just directing awareness to this dimension of bodily experience can have a remarkable transformative potential on our attitudes and priorities. So he's offering that up as a practice to get us motivated. And to me, it says, yeah, if you realize how much the world acts on you, it really, you're like, oh, I got to make sure I have some equanimity to deal with this. Right? This is just my back right here. What if when I miss a step going out to the car and I wrench my back or something like that? So it's a way to get motivation, being aware of the painful feelings in the body. So that's one suggestion. If that doesn't work, there's another suggestion. He suggests another usually unnoticed feeling can be made the object of our attention. And this usually unnoticed feeling is the rather subtle, pleasant feeling in the mind that results from just being in the present moment. The rather subtle, pleasant feeling in the mind that results from just being in the present moment. And this is something everyone here has tasted. That's why we practice. That's why we do this. Noticing the joy of being fully in the here and now takes time and effort. It takes effort. It does. You have to stop. You have to pause. So he writes, coming back to the joy of the present moment can be, oh, right, this was a nice one, can also be of considerable assistance in emerging from mental negativity. A moment of joyful respite from negativity, facilitated by just attending to the present moment. And then lastly, he writes another practice he suggests is taking inspiration from the example of the Buddha's unswerving motivation, at which point I actually laughed out loud, envisioning myself in the cross-legged position until the influxes were eradicated. I'd be at the chiropractor by the end of the day. But he writes, we could make the motivation that informs our practice, meaning why do we do this, a part of our formal meditation practice. This could be done by briefly attending mentally to that motivation when starting a sitting, so as to give meaning and context to what we're about to do, and thereby ensure that the unfolding of our cultivation, our meditative cultivation, has an orientation point. So he's saying, bring up the main direction for your life and your practice. The essence, the kernel. Why do you do this? And put that motivation at the beginning, just for a moment. Just briefly attend to it mentally. So setting your intention sounds like setting your intention as you sit down. And, some of the classic reasons, or one of the things that we often say is, may this practice alleviate the suffering in me and in others. May this alleviate the suffering in me and in others, in myself and in others. May this bring me peace gradually, perhaps not today, maybe next week sometime. So setting your intention. So those were some suggestions by the wonderful Hanalio to help us to stay motivated on the practice.